right, hello. We are in the beginning of chapter 6, linear equations and their graphs. So pretty much everything we're going to talk about in this chapter is going to be based on a linear function. So making a line, everything is going to make a line until the very end. And so the first thing we're going to talk about is lesson 6.1, rate of change and slope. Now, I'm sure you've heard both of those before, and I have the definitions for both rate of change and slope, and we use them a lot in mathematics. So here we go. Definition, rate of change. Rate of change is the relationship between two quantities that are changing. So two quantities changing and the relationship between them. Now, let's look at the definition of slope. Slope is the relationship between two quantities that are changing. Well, geez, deja vu. Well, that's because rate of change and slope are exactly the same. They are the same thing, and that's what this says. Rate of change and slope are the same. Slope, of course, these are linear, so it's y equals mx plus b. Slope is this m, and I'm going to put slope here, and I'm going to put m. It could be the change in the dependent over the change in the independent. It could be the vertical over the horizontal. It could be rise over run. It could be y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. It could be y over x. And actually, we are going to talk about all of those different ways to look at rate of change or slope. The biggest thing, the difference between rate of change and slope deals with just numbers. So when you have just numbers, like with 2 points, you'll see when we do that, really, they just refer to that as slope. When you have rate of change, usually you have always some kind of situation. So there's some kind of labels involved. I read 3 pages in 10 minutes. So pages and minutes, looking at those two quantities. It snowed 2 inches in 6 hours, something like that. So looking at the relationship between hours and inches of snow. So that's the difference between rate of change and slope, but you really find it the same way. Now, we are going to find many different ways, and the first one we're going to focus on is table. So in a table, here are the directions. You find the change in the y column, you find the change in the x column, and then slope or rate of change, because it's exactly the same, is the change in y over the change in x. So you can see we had the change in the dependent over the independent, and that's just fancy for dependent would be y, independent would be x, and you know that from our last chapter. So here is a table. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to see the change in y. So the change in y, it went from 15 to 11. When you do 15 and 11, what's happening? It looks like they're subtracting 4. From 11 to 7, they're subtracting 4. From 7 to 3, they're subtracting 4. From 3 to -1, they're subtracting 4. So the change in the y is -4. So here's the change in y. They put the negative just on the outside, but there it is, -4. So you're looking at the difference. And it should be, these are linear relationships, so it should be mostly the same all the way down. Not mostly, it will be the same all the way down. Let's look at the next one. We'll put it in orange. So this is the change in x. That's your second thing to do. So from -4 to -2 is 2. From -2 to 0 is 2. From 0 to 2 is 2. And from 2 to 4 is 2. So the change in x is 2. So the change in x is 2. And so then you do -4 divided by 2. And the slope would be, -2. So that's what we're doing for slope. So here I have the cost of renting a computer. So you have number of days in rental charge. So this one is really a rate of change because it has a situation. It has number of days and it has rental charge. Now, of course, this is our x, which we also know as our independent variable. And then here is our y, which is our dependent variable. Okay, so you know that here you're going to find, just like it says right up here, you're going to find the change in y. So the change in y over the change in x. So change in y over the change in x. And I want to show you one other thing. Sometimes you might see something like this, triangle y and triangle x. If you see that, don't let it, startle you. This is just referred to as delta. And for those of you who know your Greek letters, that is a Greek letter, delta. And delta just means change. So change in x over the change in y, or delta y and delta x. So just wanted to show you that as well. So you're going to go ahead and like we looked at before, we're going to pick up that yellow and we're going to kind of see what's going on from 60 to 75, from 75 to 90, from 90 to 105, and from 105 to 120. So each time to me, it looks like they are adding 15. So add 15. Does it work all the way down? Add 15, and then add 15. And indeed, it does. So the change in y is 15. Over, now we're going to do the change in x. So the change in x, they go from 1 to 2, looks like a change of 1, from 2 to 3, 1, 3 to 4, 1, and 4 to 5, 1. So the change in y is 1. And so then you can do 15 over 1, which is 15, and that is the slope. So if we do slope, if they ask you slope would just be plain old 15. And you do simplify. You wouldn't usually keep it 15 over 1. You get rid of the over the 1, and that's just 15. Now, if we attach the labels, so this first one, the y here, the dependent, talked about rental charge. So at the very top, we're going to have rental charge. So that was 15. Okay, so rental charge, change in y. Okay, and then over here, we can look at the number of days, and the number of days was your x. And so that's going to be your change in x, and I'll just put it here and then I'll write in there. So this is your number of days. So now what I have is I can attach that situation because I have a situation. So now really we're going to talk about B, which would be my rate of change, which most times I just abbreviate to ROC. So pretty much this 15 goes with rental charge, and that was talking money. So I probably put a money dollar sign there. And then 1 was days. So it pretty much cost $15 per day to rent. And what are we renting? Oh, we're renting a computer. So they charge $15 each day to rent a computer. So rate of change is where you attach the labels. So attaching the Y and then attaching the X. So they charge $15 each day to rent a computer. There's a lot of times that they'll ask you for both. Give me the slope and give me the rate of change. So that's the difference between the two. That's where you attach a label. So that is slope from a table. Now I want to go to the very end of these notes, and maybe you printed these off, but I'm going to go to the very end, and I want to talk about these because these come up, and they will even come up in a table. So there's 4 types of slope, and you already know this from the last chapter. There's positive slope, or you're going uphill. It goes up and to the right, okay? And then there's negative slope, and it goes downhill. That looks like the next one. There's zero slope, so no vertical change. It's a horizontal line. If you remember in the last chapter, I talked about sledding. We could all agree if we were sledding on that slope, we would have zero fun. And then the last one is undefined. So that's a vertical line. And undefined, if we were, again, sledding on that hill, there I am again in my sled, some of us would be like, woohoo, great times. And other people would be like, that's a death trap. I'm going to die on a hill like that. So therefore, we can't define what the slope is. So the slope is undefined. So You guys know those four slopes. Let's talk more about the math behind them, because we really just talked about, what those slopes will look like. So a horizontal line, this one right here, you have no vertical change. And when you do rise over run, you get 0 over a number. 0 over any number will always be 0. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So here is, we're going to talk about horizontal, which we know is 0 as far as the slope is concerned. And it would be something like this. Okay, so if I have a line here, let me put it in a different color. Let's put it in this green. If I have a line here and I put points on this line. So for instance, this point here would be, let's see, 1, 2, 3. This is 1. This would be 1, 3. And this would be 2, 3. Let's make this 3, 3. When we do slope from 2 points, which is next, I probably maybe shouldn't have done this, but I want to make sure you understand what happens when you have this. So if I were going to do my slope from 2 points, my 2 points would be 1, 3 and 3, 3. So I'm going to do y1, x1 and y1, and x2 and y2. You're going to do 3 minus 3 over 3 minus 1, and you'll understand that in a second. So 3 minus 3 is 0. 3 minus 1 is 2. So just like it said, you will get 0 over a number. So you'll get 0 over a number, and 0 over a number will always be 0. Okay, now I want to talk about this vertical. So vertical lines always have no horizontal change. So when you do rise over run, you'll get a number over 0. And because you cannot divide by 0, we always say it's undefined. So this one is 0. So now let's look at this one, and maybe we'll do it in red. So first we'll do, this is vertical. And vertical have undefined slopes. And let me show you the math behind it. So when you do rise over run, you'll get a number over 0. So if I go back to graphing this, and like I said, this will make more sense when you do 2 points. And let me put my line here in green. And now let me pick up the red. If I were to do this point, 1, 2, 3. So this would be, this point here would be 3, 1. And then this is 3 again, and maybe this is 3, 2. Whoops, put a point there, 3, 2. So when you do the math here, and you have x1, y1, x2, y2, and again, it doesn't matter, you'll see. So we do 1 minus 2 over 3 minus 3. 1 minus 2 is negative 1. 3 minus 3 is 0. And if you try to do negative 1 divided by 0 in your calculator, you are always going to get what they see as an arrow, because you can't divide by 0. You can't make 0 groups. So this is what we call undefined. Okay, so vertical lines, when you do rise over run, you get a number over 0. And because you can't divide by 0, you're undefined. Okay, last but not least, I found this little slope guy, and he's kind of cute. I've never seen him before, so I wanted to share that with you too. So here is a positive slope line. So I'm going to kind of make this little slope guy. So there's his one eye. And then a negative slope goes like this, and here's his negative line. So he's kind of got one eye open and one eye closed, or kind of a winky type eye. Then he has a nose. Notice what this nose is. It's straight up and down, which is vertical, and we refer to it as undefined. Do you see me putting that U? And then last but not least, we'll put in a smile. And have you ever seen in the picture, a lot of times they have like little circles there for the smile. And look at this line is horizontal and the slope is 0. Huh, isn't it cute? So this is positive. Oh, I mean, this is negative. This is positive. This is undefined. And this is 0. Yeah, cute little slope guy. So there you have it. Tables.